everybody. It's Thursday, October 8th. I'm Cecilia Sepp, CAE. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Nonprofit Consulting, and I'm very excited to start a new series that's an addendum series to Chatting with Agnes and Cecilia. It's called Nonprofit Executive Spotlight. And Rogue Tulips is proud to support this series to feature our colleagues in the community who are in transition and looking for that next opportunity. And I'm really excited today to be here with Kimberlee Berry, who is our first guest on the show. And Kimberlee is an expert in the member experience at nonprofit organizations with a specialty in component relations. So welcome, Kimberlee. Is there anything you'd like to add to that intro?
No, thank you so much, Cecilia. I'm thrilled to be here and to be part of the inaugural podcast that you have here. And I think you covered everything, and we'll discuss a little bit more as we go forward.
Well, so Kimberlee, what do you think is the most important issue today? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Well, I hope it's the middle. Maybe it's the end. That would be better. But what is the most important issue right now? We're in the fourth quarter of 2020 for membership organizations.
I would say the issue that's most pressing right now is the same issue that was pressing pre-pandemic, but what I think the pandemic has done is really focused more strongly on the need to connect better with our members and to provide real value. And by that, I mean, associations are, I'm going to use the word notorious, that if you go to their website or you get their brochure, there's a list of benefits, what they call benefits. They're promoting their conference, they're promoting discount programs or affinity programs, but it really doesn't get to the heart of value. What is it that creates that value from the member? And this pandemic has really exposed the need to do that. And I think many associations have risen to that challenge where they are connecting better with their members. That part of it has improved. And I see that through the virtual experience. While associations rely heavily on the in-person experience through their conferences, adult learning, et cetera, the virtual has allowed people to engage, I think, more frequently and in a different way than they have before. And part of that might have been just to allow their members to express what they're going through in this, unprecedented time, offering ways for people to really look at wellness better, to look at how to engage with members better. So while it has been devastating on so many fronts, I think it has really presented an opportunity for many nonprofit associations to connect with their members, which I think is still really critical. And along with that, what goes adjacent with it is embracing technology. Mm-hmm. Again, associations are like the Titanic. It takes a long time to turn the ship, if you will. And meanwhile, they're sinking, and it's just a slow leak. The associations have had to embrace technology. They've been forced to kind of catch up where they've been maybe 5 steps behind. They've been forced to kind of catch up in an effort to engage with members, whether it's through virtual conferences, webcasts, virtual happy hours, if you will. All of those things have really forced associations to innovate in a way where they might not have prior to the pandemic.
Well, that's really interesting points about technology, especially because I know you and I have had conversations about the hybrid conference experience, the hybrid meeting experience. And it's long been my opinion that the member experience has been virtual all along because they don't come to your office every day anyway. Even when we were still doing telephone calls and letters, that was how they interacted. It wasn't in person necessarily, which is why in person was so important. But I do know you have some strong opinions on leveraging hybrid meetings and events more to increase that member value. So could you share some of your thoughts on that?
And just to piggyback on what you were talking about, that we've been doing it all along, I think associations just haven't looked at it that way. They looked at it as, well, we're just making a phone call to take care of something. And I think having, whether you're going to call it hybrid or integrated, I think to have a one size fits all experience really does the organization and the member a disservice. I think you have to meet the member where they are in their lives. And if you want to engage a larger arena of people, you have to have different ways for them to engage. So even when, God willing, there is a vaccine and it's distributed, throughout the world, and people can get back to face meetings, I think it would be a mistake to say, let's do a complete 180 shift back to in-person only and take out of it that integrated experience, whether it's live streaming or pre-recorded learning or professional development. You really have to go all of those avenues. And one of the things I've realized in talking with some of my colleagues is when they've gone through maybe their first round of virtual meetings, they've been able to engage people who otherwise would not have engaged, whether it was a financial issue, being able to travel, the expenses and time related to that. It just wasn't an option for everybody at the organization. And I know that ASAE, for instance, realized an exponential increase in the number of attendees. And this has been experienced by a lot of other organizations. So I would think that going forward, you keep an integrated approach. There are going to be people like me who thrive off of the in-person experience and want to connect that way. And then not that other people don't want to, but there are restrictions about who can go or how many people can go in an organization. And so I think this is a real opportunity to say, there's not one way to engage with someone. There are lots of different platforms that you can use. And going back to the technology, use technology as your friend, as a different way to engage. We do so in our personal lives, but for some reason, when it comes to organizations, we're slow to adapt in the nonprofit world. And so I really hope that going forward, that we don't slide backwards, that we continue on the path that we're on.
That's a really good point, because I've been thinking this week, as we've been preparing for your debut here on Nonprofit Executive Spotlight, about the whole hybrid meeting, because we've had a couple of really good conversations about that. And I remembered back in January 2010, we may all remember the snowpocalypse, which seemed a world-ending incident at that point. So we've survived that. But I think we really missed the boat, building on your Titanic analogy, with that, because remember the unconference, there was supposed to be the tech conference, and then the snowpocalypse happened, and then within 36 hours there was an online streaming event, but there were also in-person people there. And then I think it was it 2010 also that ASAE had the meeting in Los Angeles? Because
I believe because I know I didn't attend that one.
You didn't go to that one, because they were trying that. They were experimenting with streaming some of the sessions in real time, and then you had the in-person, and then they never seemed to try it again. So you're kind of like, what scared them off of that? So what do you think? Why, where do you think we'd be if we would have learned those lessons 10 years ago?
I think it's a natural inclination, because certainly in my experience working with affiliates or chapters, different components, I often hear when someone proposes doing something new, someone who's been around for 25 years will go, well, we did that before, it didn't work.
Oh, yes.
And instead of taking that deeper dive into figuring out why didn't it succeed and how can we make it better, they generally throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, and they're very reluctant to go back to that. Well, a lot has changed. Technology changes every 6 months. And so certainly where we were in 2010 and 2011 in the realm of virtual education, we are light years ahead of that now.
Mhm.
So I think it would behoove for those who have that historical information to say, what are the things that we tried to do 10 years ago and it didn't quite succeed that maybe we should take another look at
Mhm.
and see how it works. And I do feel like we really missed the ball in a lot of ways. And I've even suggested, as far as ASAE is concerned, and I would make that same suggestion to other associations, is when you have a lot of first time attendees, and in ASAE's case, I think they tripled the number of attendees,
Yeah.
have a plan in place about how you are going to engage those first timers. I mean, it is golden fruit. When you talk about low hanging fruit, these are people who are members, but they're not engaged. This was for many, their first engagement with the association. So you have a real opportunity to show value, to make that connection. And so I've been saying all along, or at least for the past several months, make a plan about how it is that you're going to engage any first time attendee. So whether your attendance grew by 100% or just 25%, you're always going to have people who attend for the first time. You know, what are you doing leading up to the conference to engage them, during the conference, and what happens afterwards? And again, it's about creating a meaningful member experience.
Mhm.
I will rave about any experience I have when it's positive, whether it's when I go to a restaurant, a doctor's office, wherever. Conversely, if it was a horrible, disappointing experience, I'm going to tell people about that as well. So what should be foremost in everyone's mind is, what do I want a member to say about this particular organization and their experience? What would I want? And so I think we really need to focus on that. I think often we come up with a framework for member engagement and we force that potential member to fit into that mold, as opposed to us saying, let's fit within their mold. Let's operate in a way that's meaningful to them. And it's not going to be the same for every member, which goes into a whole other issue about customizing the member experience, not saying everyone's going to have the same experience.
Well, and one of the things people really don't like to hear when I say it is every member belongs to a different association.
They
Because
do.
of what you just said, everybody has a different experience. So one of the things we only have about 2 minutes left for this segment, but just really quickly, I love the way you connect the in-person experience with the member experience. So many groups silo the conference event experience from the ongoing member experience. So what are some tips you might have for making sure those are integrated on a regular basis and going forward and feeding into that member value perception?
I think it starts really from the moment that someone joins for the very first time and the information that you gather. Typically, we gather the standard demographical information. Who do you work for? Name, address, phone number, email. And then we instantly ask them, what committee do you want to join?
Oh, yeah.
We have yet to figure out what are their interests. And so I think it really goes, if you want to really drill it down, it can go back to what information are you capturing in your database? What is it that you know about your members that can really help you better form that member experience? So for instance, I know many organizations are starting to ask, how many devices do you have or that you frequently use?
Mhm.
Okay, I can find out they have a lot of devices and we all use them, but what's the one that you use mostly? And someone might go, well, it's my phone. And you go, well, I could still email them. But then you ask, what's your preference about that? But going a little deeper, you talk about interests. I know when I sign up for something outside of an association, they ask me about my hobbies.
Mhm.
That helps with the member experience, because if I find out that 25% of my new members are runners, well, you better believe that I'm going to have some event centered around running, or if they're into yoga, or you've got some who are political junkies, then you might point them towards being part of your government affairs committee because they've identified that this is an interest of theirs. If you find that people say they volunteer with certain charitable organizations, that tells you that that's really important to that member, that the organization that they belong to has some relevance within their community, that they're doing something for the community. And we already know that Gen Z, if you will, that coming up, and even some of the millennials, they want to belong to an organization that has social ties, that is doing something for the greater community. So all of these things are important to creating that member experience. Again, it's not going to be the same for everyone, but as you are building your communications, one, you want to communicate through a medium that's preferred by that member, and you've got several. You want to really hone in on the things that they're interested in, and that's where it goes back to finding out where are their key interests, not only in general, but within the organization, so that you can even customize your newsletters to say, this person, these are the things that person's interested in. And if you start tagging your content, you know what to send out to that person. It's already happening. Even the buying experience, we all know with Amazon, they go, if you buy this, these are some things you might also be interested in. So using AI in that regard as well. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do, but I think it really, really starts from that very first impression of the information that you're putting out.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Kimberlee, thank you for being our inaugural guest on Nonprofit Executive Spotlight. And everyone out there listening to this, Kimberlee would love to talk to you about possibly joining your team. She's a certified association executive, and you can connect with Kimberlee on LinkedIn. But Kimberlee, is there another way you'd like people to connect with you as well?
I think LinkedIn is the perfect way to start the conversation. And if things progress from there, you can also pull my email address, direct email from my LinkedIn contact as well.
Excellent. Well, great. Well, thanks again, Kimberlee. And you've demonstrated that you bring a lot of great new ideas and a lot of experience to any nonprofit organization. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for having me. And it's a great honor to be part of the first inaugural Spotlight group.
Spotlight. Yes. Well, and thank you. And so everybody, Kimberlee's out there. Talk to her about adding her to your team. So on behalf of Rogue Tulips, we're very pleased to feature Kimberlee and hope you enjoyed our nonprofit executive spotlight for this week. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.